What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So I would like to kind of say that the takeover has finally happened, but to be fair, it was actually very methodical and it's pretty much instantaneous. So what am I referring to? Aaron Rodgers pretty much has full control of this team, right? The Johnsons, Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, they're at the mercy of Aaron Rodgers, and I don't say that to necessarily be a negative thing, but it is part of the discussion, right? Is Aaron Rodgers having as much control and influence over this team a great thing or is it a bad thing, right? And I guess it depends on which side of the glass you're looking through, half glass empty or half glass full. But since not the moment we signed Aaron Rodgers, but literally since the moment that we made it our intention to actually go after him and woo him to come to the East Coast, Aaron Rodgers has had his way in every way you can think about it, right? Draft input, free agency input, pick of offensive coordinator. Even though Nathaniel Hackett was signed before him, we most likely know now the reason why we initially signed him. And so it's an interesting case study in the NFL. I hate that it has to be us. It's always us. But we have jobs for a reason. We have a general manager that should be able to objectively look at talent and decide here's the best players that I can bring to our team, rather than what we saw during the offseason wooing Aaron Rodgers, right? A lot of these signings, over-the-hill guys that at best, are maybe 3, and 4, how do I want to say this? Guys, at least in terms of wide receiver position, that are playing at a third, fourth, fifth depth chart level, right? You have the over the hill guys, the Randall Cobbs that we're signing, the Dwayne Browns that we're doubling on, the Alan Lazard that's essentially overpriced. Billy Turner coming over, right? Not only these were all, and essentially all of them, at least for the guys tied to the Packers, these were moves that were supposed to help with installing this new offense and making life more comfortable for Aaron Rodgers as he transitions to New York. Now, if you're a GM, tell me what part of any of that has to do with you objectively identifying talent that can help this team win games. Now, I understand with Aaron Rodgers, it's a little bit different, right? Because these are guys we've seen him excelling at a high level, minus maybe a Billy Turner. But we've seen him achieve a lot of success with a lot of these guys. But we didn't get Aaron Rodgers this year. We got him for 4 plays and then all season, none of which ultimately ended up mattering because it didn't have any impact on the end result of our season. Now, moving forward, we don't really have anything to play for anymore, right? We have, I think I saw a 1% chance of making the playoffs now. We still have a handful of division games coming up, which it looks like we're not going to even sniff a victory there. And then you have a lot of other teams that, they're essentially on the rise, right? Sam Howell's out there. Maybe the worst off team is the Patriots, and we always end up having a rough time with them. And then you have the Falcons, and they're getting Desmond Ridder back after switching things up due to turnovers and all this kind of stuff. So maybe the Falcons is the last legit game you have a chance for, pending whatever happens with Tim Boyle. But again, we're not talking about anybody in terms of Zach Wilson or Tim Boyle when it comes quarterback of the future, right? That's out. So when you look at what can happen now, you also have to look to the past, right? And talking about Aaron Rodgers influencing these decisions, we talked about the free agency class. We know that we reached out to the Las Vegas Raiders about Devontae Adams prior to the trade deadline being over. They refused to trade him. And then we have the reports now saying that we'll make another strong run, basically probably an offer that can't be refused in order to bring in Devontae Adams to further help this offense as well as, have the best weapon Aaron Rodgers has essentially played with in his career on deck. Another guy, and it's no disrespect to Devontae Adams, but in terms of roster building and, cap management and all that kind of stuff, you're talking about another high-priced free agent, a guy that's over 30, still doesn't look like he's really slowing down, but nonetheless, over 30. I think he has a $140 million contract. He's only in the second year in or something like that. And who knows if we get Aaron Rodgers for any more than just the 1 year in 2024, right? I know he restructured his contract, but still, at this point, he could retire now, and there'd be nothing we can do to stop him. So, from the half glass full approach, the only thing that makes sense to me right now, and some people are saying I've been overreacting, but Robert Saleh, Nathaniel Hackett, Joe Douglas, more so probably Saleh and Douglas, their jobs are safe, assumingly as long as Aaron Rodgers is around, right? Because that was the promise that essentially I would imagine Woody Johnson invested in. You're bringing in a Hall of Fame quarterback. We have the infrastructure for the most part, elite defense. We're building up our offensive line. We have a top-notch talent in Garrett Wilson, a top-notch guy in Breece Hall. Aaron Rodgers is going to be that missing piece that Zach Wilson couldn't be. We're going to go out and get us a Super Bowl. All of that could go out the window. Again, we'll see if we actually do make that. We'll see if the trade revivals continue once the offseason is officially here. But we could be easily heading for a top 5 pick. So when I think about the draft, then there's a million other questions that come up because we know Aaron Rodgers is going to have his input there. Zach Wilson is still his boy. It'll be interesting to see what his thoughts were about how his season has turned out because I fully expect not to see Zach Wilson anymore. So maybe we'll get those questions on a Pat McAfee show, today by the time you guys are seeing this, or at least sometime within the next couple of weeks. And what he thinks. Maybe he admits he was wrong about Zach Wilson too, as much as a person can be honest in the NFL. Maybe he doubles down though and he says he's still the guy I want to hand this team off to, and now the Jets are in a precarious situation because you have the perfect opportunity to go out there and probably add a top-notch quarterback to your team. One that can finally sit, by the way, behind an elite talent and Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers without having to throw him to the fire. And you can successfully pass the torch the way that it's generally been done, minus the last couple of years, for the better part of the last few decades, right? By letting him sit on the bench and learn and work out his kinks through practice until you get to a comfortable point. But what could ultimately happen is that we force his hand. We maybe trade our first-round pick for Davante Adams. If that doesn't happen, we potentially look to invest in an offensive lineman, or maybe he says, hey, I want a weapon. God forbid we, go the defensive line route again, or, even secondary at this point, I'd be willing to say in terms of cornerbacks. But he can influence what happens there. And the more likely plan to me is that we probably see Davante Adams become that first-round draft pick next year. Or, fingers crossed, we have the talent that matches up with where we're at to draft an offensive lineman, right? I do think we need to be all in there. And then the second piece would be, what does free agency look like again this time around, right? You've essentially signed all the guys you could this last offseason that, paired well with him. So now what do you focus on, right? Does Aaron Rodgers say, hey, I need an offensive line in front, right? Do the threats start to come out? Build me a satisfactory offensive line that I can sign off on, or I'm going to go ahead and, ride off into the sunset. Or give me a Davante Adams, or I'm going to ride off into the sunset, figure out how to build me an offensive line elsewise, right? And we've seen it work. Joe Burrow's made it happen. We've seen Deshaun Watson make it happen. There's a few other examples out there, I'm sure. Tom Brady has mostly had great offensive linemen, but even Aaron Rodgers to a degree. It's been a few teams he's been on where the offensive line play hasn't been elite. And I don't think we necessarily need that either. But I don't know. Can you play like the Bengals based on what we've seen with the Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams pairing? So I do get very concerned about all of the control he has, right? Nathaniel Hackett staying, it is what it is. If you want to say nobody could succeed behind this offensive line and Zach Wilson, right? It kind of seems like a combined pairing. By all means, you have your rights to your opinion, and I don't necessarily disagree with those. Zach Wilson, to me, wholeheartedly is definitely a very, I don't want to say modest. He's definitely a huge part of the problem with what we've seen with our offense. And I'm willing to bet you'll see it with Tim Boyle, Friday. Barely having, enough practices to really kind of get adjusted being a starter, but you'll see us convert some third downs. You'll see us look like a functional offense. I don't think we'll put up 30 points or anything, but you'll see the weapons get impacted. You'll see Garrett Wilson get his healthy targets. You'll see Tyler Conklin, be featured a little bit, I'm sure. Jeremy Rucker get involved. Maybe you find a way, if you can stay close in the game, to, give Izzy some meaningful snaps. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, right now, I would as much as I hate to say it, I would probably scrap everything we have going on right now. Joe Douglas, for his poor roster mismanagement, I think he's found talent. I think the roster has been mismanaged. Robert Saleh, his reluctancy to recognize what everybody else is seeing early. Again, I mentioned this a little bit. There's a respect that I have for him willing to ride out his plan to the end. That's all gravy. But knowing that you had other legit options, you can at least pivot to is where things. That's where you start to lose me, right? It's one thing if he has Zach Wilson, a bunch of bums behind him, but you have other options, right? Or at least it's the fact that certain players have been so bad that you couldn't possibly get any worse. And you didn't want to go to those options. And then of course Robert Saleh can't help anything on offense. So the fact that you sold yourself, you sold your soul and essentially the franchise to Aaron Rodgers to get his best friend in Nathaniel Hackett, and I was excited about him. I don't take any of that away, right? I looked at what he was able to do during his time with the Jaguars and a few of the other stops, and it did seem like he was able to get some guys to produce above their talent level, and I enjoyed that. But this is one of those, the performances that we've seen consistently, mind you. It's not like a one-off game that's just so terrible any other person in the league is getting fired. This lets you know the influence that Aaron Rodgers has here, because Woody Johnson would have probably pulled this plug in like week, I don't know. I know we finished, heading into the bye week at 4-4 or whatever, but I honestly think he would have pulled the plug a lot sooner, right? We probably wouldn't have got to the Eagles game before Nathaniel Hackett and or Robert Saleh was maybe out of here. So, from my perspective, my question would be to you guys is to just seriously think, with some of the moves that will be coming up in terms of the draft and free agents and all that kind of stuff, understand that this is no longer Robert Saleh's and Joe Douglas's team to a certain degree. This is Aaron Rodgers. It's the Aaron Rodgers show. What he wants is going to go, because we've essentially, again, put all our eggs into one basket here. And you essentially need to make the 2024 year work if your name's Joe Douglas or Robert Saleh to have any chance of even probably continuing your careers in the NFL for the next couple of years. So, I don't know. With that, let me know what you guys think. Aaron Rodgers, does he have too much control? Any of your thoughts about the future? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.